couple of things. So what is mental health? What is healthy diet? What are the links between two of these? So we know that our mental health really exists on the continuum. So we all have mental health, and most of us move between various stages of mental health. So some days we might feel sad or stressed or worried. That's quite normal. So we all feel happy at times. When I mention good or positive mental health, I mean the states of minds and feeling and actions when the majority of the time we feel okay. So about here somewhere. When I talk about mental disorders, I mean states when most of the time people might feel pretty unwell. So it's these states here. But as I mentioned, mental health is quite a dynamic state to keep in mind. What's interesting that when it's come to the management of mental health, for years, traditional medical approach was somewhat fragmented. We really focused on the head and we did not look at humans as a whole body. We did treated mental disorders as disorders of head, so to speak. But what we increasingly understand that there's a complex determinants that impact our mental health. For example, biological factors, developmental factors, genetic factors, social factors, environment, the way we deal with stress, all of these will determine our mental health state. What is very exciting that we understand now that lifestyle in general and diet in particular is also in this mix. The modern food continuum changed somewhat. We know that just like mental health, our food, what we eat day to day varies, and that's okay. We might eat a variety of foods, and with modern way of producing food, most of us and most of what we eat undergoes some level of processing. So when you have a look at this picture, we have some whole foods, so foods which have not been processed much. And here we have some examples of ultra-processed foods. So it's foods which undergone a lot of transformations before we start eating them. In general, although we all eat variety of foods, the way we eat as humans, our diets have changed dramatically. And what we eat influences our mental health and our mood. Often not for the better, if it's not particularly high quality diet. So let's have a look at specific links between diet and mental health across the life course. So we know that our quality of diet, or what we eat, so that habitual consumption of food and drinks impacts our mental health even before we're born. We see studies, or we have studies and evidence in pregnant women, which shows that quality of their diet during pregnancy is actually associated with mental health and behavior of their children. Quite interesting here. Again, it's not to make pregnant mothers feel guilty. It's to raise awareness that what we eat when we're carrying children can actually impact their physical and mental health as well. In children, food becomes very important. It's a fantastic time in life. So youth and childhood, fantastic time in life to set the scenes for the future, to establish good food practices. And we know that here, food also links to depressive symptoms and to quality of life. We have enough studies to show us that. In adults, we know that better quality diet actually decreases the risk of developing depression, which is most common mental health disorder, by about 30%. That's a pretty good percentage. And of course, as we age, quality diet is absolutely necessary to support our cognitive health and to support overall healthy aging. What's interesting that we develop in the evidence, as I mentioned, that better quality diet is linked to better mental health outcomes. And this evidence are coming from a different population. So I'll talk today about Mediterranean style of eating or Mediterranean cuisine. But it doesn't matter what kind of diet we actually discuss, as long as it's got those common denominators. So high intake of plant-based whole foods, such as vegetables and whole grains, legumes and fruit, and low intake of ultra-processed foods. So studies from everywhere show very similar outcome, very similar impact on our mental health. The more good food we eat, it seems to be the more it's better for our mental health. Whereas ultra-processed foods, those foods with a lot of added sugar or salt, actually have detrimental impact on our mental health. So when I say low quality diet, higher quality diet, so I think we kind of know what I'm talking about, but just to confirm. So when I talk about low quality diets, they're usually diets which are very high in ultra processed foods. So ultra processed meats, food with lots of added sugar or salt, sugar sweetened beverages, and foods with trans fats. Higher quality diet, as I mentioned before, diets high in whole foods, in plant foods. So you don't have to be vegetarian or vegan, but majority of your food should really come from plant sources, such as vegetables, fruit, whole grains, bean and legumes, nuts and seeds, with optimal amounts of good fats and proteins. We all know that, yet when we look at statistics, only 4% of Australian adults actually eating recommended amount of vegetables. I do wonder if we know how many serves are actually recommended a day. So if you know the answer, go right ahead and pop that into chat and we can have a look. Okay, let's now, we see that diet actually linked to our mental health, but how does it actually happen? So one of the questions which was posted prior to this webinar is about the gut microbiota and what links our gut microbiota has with our mental health. So let's unpack this concept a little bit. It's all due to that gut-brain axis, and you probably heard about that. It's that bidirectional communication between our gut and microbiota in our gut and our brain. So centers in our brain which are responsible for feelings, mood, and cognition. And this communication happening all the time. They constantly in crosstalk. Our gut microbiota is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. Although we have microorganisms living on us and inside of us everywhere, the majority of them are reside in the gut. So I usually try to, or like to say here, if you ever feel alone, please don't, because you do have 100 trillion microorganisms living inside of you. Actually, majority, pretty much all of the genetic material we carry as humans belongs to our microbiota. It's quite interesting, and gut microbiota has been responsible for many health states. So it's really very interesting and very fast developing area of research. We know that gut microbiota, of course, have impact on our physical health. For example, on our gut health, that's quite obvious here, but also on many other metabolic aspects of our health, cardiovascular health, and many, many other areas of human health. It's also linked to brain health, as I mentioned, due to that gut-brain axis. We understand that stress and disease and mental health state, so the mental health illness, actually associated with alterations in gut microbiota composition and in its function. So we see increased levels of inflammatory cells and mediators of so-called intestinal dysbiosis. Although we don't like the word dysbiosis much because we don't quite know how it might look. Generally, it's when something is not quite right with your gut microbiota composition or function. Often it's referred to as dysbiosis. In healthy status, our gut really is in check with our brain. Communications are normal. We see that gut impacts the way our brain works, and I'm not going to go into details about this, but I'm happy to present about that next time. So we understand that both gut and brain actually responsible for this communication. When it's come to factors which influence our gut microbiota, there are many and varied. So of course, geography, where we're born, our age, the way we were born, medications we use in our environment and hygiene, exercise, level of various other environmental factors which might be impacting us, all influence our gut microbiota composition and function. But one of the major keys, major determinants of our gut microbiota is actually our habitual diet. So food and drinks we consume regularly. And when we look at diet and gut microbiota and how it actually works with our brain, we can see the very similar tendencies and very similar associations as we saw when we just look at mental health and our diet. So when we consume whole food diets with a lot of fruit, vegetables, and whole grains, we usually consume a lot of fiber and polyphenols, which been shown to impact quite beneficially on our gut microbiota. It's usually linked to proliferation of so-called beneficial bacteria, for example, bifidobacteria. It's also linked to higher production, those whole food diets, linked to higher production of short-chain fatty acids. So it's certain metabolites which gut microbiota produces while it's basically consuming fiber, which we as humans can't really digest. So it's moving along our digestive tract for microbiota to consume. And we see that the more we provide our gut microbiota with healthier food, full of fiber and polyphenols, the more we see proliferation of gut microbiota, which is linked to that high production of short-chain fatty acids, which have fantastic beneficial impact for our gut health, but also for overall health. It's definitely been shown to improve mood states. So that type of food through the link with gut microbiota. In ultra-processed diets or in dietary styles which are based on a lot of ultra-processed foods, those foods are usually very low in fiber. So what we see, it's quite a detrimental impact on our gut microbiota. So decrease in a number of beneficial bacteria families, also decrease in abundance of different microbiota, decrease in production of short-chain fatty acids, and that might lead to inflammatory states in our gut and overall in our body, because we do need our fantastic gut microbiota to basically look after our gut. So happy gut microbiota food, pretty easy. As I mentioned before, plant foods. So vegetables, legumes, fruit, whole grains to provide our gut microbiota with that fiber and polyphenols they absolutely need. Fermented foods are fantastic too. So, and here I'm talking about fermented vegetables or yogurt and not so much wine or beer. So fermented foods are pretty good, although not all of them contain actually live bacteria, despite what shop labels might tell you. Not all of them actually contain live bacteria, but a lot of fermented foods do introduce new beneficial bacteria into our gut and also come with additional energy, nutrients, vitamins, and minerals. Fats such as from olive oil, nuts, or omega-3 fatty acids, which we see in seafood, are also quite beneficial for our gut health. Let's have a brief look at dietary interventions for improving mental health. So we understand that why we actually first, why did we look at dietary interventions? Well, it's because for the last 30 to 40 years, there's been very little advances when it's come to, say, medical treatment of particularly common mental health disorders such as depression. So pharmacotherapy is really kind of slowing down and pausing. So we have medications, we have psychotherapy, which of course very important, but lifestyle changes, improvements in diet are also recommended. Particularly now, they're recommended in guidelines as a first-line therapy, because we understand that improvements and changes in lifestyle actually helps overall health. It helps to improve our mental health, and it's also dealing with that whole person concept, sorry. So we're not just dealing with a head, we're dealing with whole person. I mentioned before Mediterranean diet. It is well recognized in mental health space. Is it the healthiest diet? Does everyone need to follow Mediterranean style diet? I think that remains to be seen, because Mediterranean diet is, of course, most probably studied diet, particularly in English language. But as I mentioned before, there's other dietary styles which follow same principles, which are as good for our mental and physical health as Mediterranean diet. However, next study I would like to discuss with you, the SMILES trial, which was conducted by the Food and Mood Center. We are very proud of our SMILES trial, although currently we conducting another 20 trials in this space. But our SMILES trial was the very first randomized controlled trial, which actually looked at diet as a way of improving mood. So in the SMILES trial, which we began 6 years ago, we enlisted or recruited people with a clinical depression. So not just people who were not feeling well, with a medically diagnosed clinical depression. And we split people into two groups. So one group, we suggested to follow dietary intervention, and another group followed befriending protocol. So with same intensity and same number of visits, same number of conversations, because we know that befriending usually helps to improve mood. So we wanted to compare diet and befriending protocol. So in our dietary arm, we ask people to follow the MODI-MED diet. It's a modified Mediterranean diet. So it's based generally on the guidelines for Greek population. So it was designed and delivered by a dietitian, and it's focused on increasing those plant foods, so vegetables, fruit, grains, and decreasing highly processed or ultra-processed foods. So this pyramid shows you exactly what we've been discussing with people and what they should have been eating under the MODI-MED regimen. So whole grains, we included quite a generous amount of whole grains, so 5 to 7 serves. But of course, it's depend on the needs of individuals. So someone who lives in a larger body, very active people might need more serves, whereas people who are more slender or less active would not probably need 8 serves of grains a day. We also recommended people to consume vegetables and fruits. So a lot of veggies, a lot of fruits, 5 to 6 serves of vegetables and 3 serves of fruit. We included dairy because dairy is a great source of calcium and many other macro and micronutrients we need in our everyday diet. We suggested for people to use olive oil as the main added fat. So for all the cooking, for any preparation, any food preparation, olive oil, particularly extra virgin olive oil, was recommended as main source of fat. We also included nuts. Nuts are fantastic. So raw nuts are great. Those nuts which been, had some added sugar or salt to, probably not so much, but raw nuts are a great source of good fats, of energy, of protein. So if, by the way, if you like to make your nuts taste better, go ahead and pop them for 1 minute into microwave. It toasts them quite nicely and increases taste and flavor nicely as well. But back to ModiMed diet. We also recommended people to eat legumes. One of the concepts today I'm gonna talk about is eating on a budget. And legumes are actually very budget-friendly food. So we recommended people on ModiMed diet to consume about 3 to 4 serves of legumes per week. Remember how I said that it's modified Mediterranean diet, which we adjusted for Australian population? Because generally, red meat is seldom consumed in Mediterranean diet. So maybe once few months, once a year, and some populations don't even consume that. However, because we conducted our SMILES trial in Australian population, we thought we better go ahead and include a little bit more red meat than in traditional Mediterranean diet. So we recommended about 3 to 4 serves a week, no more than that. We also suggested people consuming fish, poultry, and eggs as their sources of protein. What we did talk about, it's reducing, and look how we shine away here from photos, all those extras. So discretionary foods, which fantastic and tasty and convenient and everywhere, and they're cheap and we like to eat them, but research does shows that they do very little for our mental and physical health. So that's what we try to actually do. We try to ask people to decrease the consumption of those ultra-processed discretionary foods. And that's where, you know, Mediterranean diet and Mediterranean dietary principles are fantastic, because you can eat in abundance. You don't have to limit. You can eat sweet fruits. You can have honey and yogurt instead of, you know, some kind of ultra-processed foods. You can snack on nuts. So it's really in abundance, all other foods. We also provided our participants with a lot of resources. So we gave them ideas around, say, food planning. And as you can see, this is one of the illustrations of resources we provided. So simple principles of combining protein, so either your tuna, eggs or beans, with some kind of cereal or starchy veggies. So pitas, bread, potatoes, and then lots of vegetables. So as salad, mushrooms, additional pre-cut salads, we'll talk about them when we talk about budget as well. So simple combinations of protein, cereals, and vegetables for every pretty much meal. So our participants done really well and completed our SMILES trial for 12 weeks. And after 12 weeks, we saw quite impressive results. So people in the dietary group who were able to change their diets for the better also significantly improve their mental health outcomes. So their depressive symptoms improve so well that 1/3 of dietary support group actually achieved remission criteria. So they were no longer classified as having depression. So 12 weeks it took. We think it's very impressive results. We also did, because look, budget is important. We will talk about budget. So in the SMILES trial, what we did, we actually counted how much does it cost to eat better. I have to say that these calculations were conducted in Melbourne metropolitan area about 6 years ago, so times have changed. But then we saw that following the recommendations of the SMILES diet, and including all the fresh fruit and vegetables and meats and fish and nuts and olive oil, would cost an individual about $112 per week. Whereas typical diet of our participants pre-dietary intervention would have cost them about $138. So participants saved approximately $30 per week as individual by following our recommendations. And as I mentioned, that's quite a few years back. But we see the general tendencies for more fresher diets to be actually on a long run cheaper. And I explain what I mean in the next few slides, where we talk about tips and practical strategies. So the main top tips from ModiMed diet would be these 5. So first, include vegetables with every meal and eat your legumes 3 to 4 times per week. Aim for whole grain breads and cereals. These are really good. Whole grains provide a lot of nutrients our body and our gut microbiota needs to function healthily. Choose fruit, vegetables, and nuts as snacks. So snacking is fantastic. It keeps our energy levels up. So fruit, vegetables, and nuts are great snacks. Try to make your choices and try to limit that highly processed or ultra processed foods. I know they're everywhere. I know they're tasty. Look, that's why we all eat them, because they are pretty easy to reach out and grab, convenient, available, tasty, but not maybe too many of them. And if you'd like to change something in your diet, start small with sustainable changes. How our participants in the SMILES trial were able to change, it's because every time they had a discussion about their diet, they were making small goals, so SMART goals, small, sustainable, achievable goals. For example, it could be, I might try a new variety of vegetables every month for the rest of the year and see how I go. So you can find the vegetable you like and try to include this type of vegetable in your diet. Talking about vegetables, it's great to veg out. So we are all concerned about hikes in prices on fresh foods, and $12 head of lettuce, of course, will make anyone concerned about what we're going to be eating. But vegetables are fantastic, and we really should try and include more vegetables in our diet, starting with breakfast. So simple green omelets or just some avocado and tomato on toast is an easy breakfast, and generally we'll all have time to create something like this. If you're not a vegetable fan, or your family or people you usually eat your meals with don't like vegetables, we are very lucky to live in a country where there's a lot of variety. So I'm sure everyone can find a vegetable they actually like. Salad vegetables are usually easier. Pre-cut veggies are usually easier, so you don't go through all the preparation then to find out that you might don't like them. So start with something small. Also, fruit and fruit are fantastic snacks for us as well. So fruit prices been more or less stable with a slight increase. So fruit are good to include all the time, every day, 2 to 3 fruits for everyone. Legumes, nuts, and seeds. I did talk about legumes, and remember how we in ModiMed diet or in the Smiles trial, we recommended people to consume 3 to 4 serves of legumes, nuts, and seeds per week. So they're pretty easy to prepare, they're pretty easy to find, they're pretty easy to store. Also, if you buy in dried legumes, they're very, very, very budget friendly. And all of them, so quite often people ask me, look, I just have no idea what to do with dry legumes. What do I do with them? So every pack you buy them in usually does have instructions on the back how to prepare them. Most of them might need soaking, but then, you know, you have 1 to 3 outcomes. So one cup of dry beans or legumes will produce about 3 cups of cooked legumes or beans. So you can see it's pretty economical and budget friendly way to cook your meals. And then you can add legumes on toast as a snack, dip vegetables in them, mix them in with mince, for example. If you're doing spag bowl for the family, you chuck some legumes in, everyone is happy, including your budget. Whole grains are absolutely fantastic. So I mentioned whole grains. These are affordable, available, and very much adaptable. So whole grains, of course, it's part of that carbohydrates group, which has been, you know, given some mixed reviews in the last few years. But please trust me when I tell you that carbohydrates are very important in our everyday diet, and whole grains are fantastic representatives of those carbohydrates. So again, if we look around, there's lots of grains which we can cook at home, already pre-cooked, available for us, which are pretty budget friendly as well. Talking about budget, if you eat plants, you eat cheaper. That's absolutely for sure. So this is a simple recipe, and it shows you how much $10 can actually buy you. Either, you know, meal for one with a questionable quality, or actually 6 meals which are packed with nutrition, fiber, polyphenols for your gut and for your mental health. So eating on a budget, eating well on a budget is possible. What we do need is a bit of planning, knowledge, skills, and resources. So we need to spend some time to plan what we would like to eat in the next few days. If we live with family or friends, we need to lock them in a room and make sure that they will tell us what they would like to eat. We spend some time on this, and then next time we're rushing and running through supermarket, we actually know what we need, and we're not stunned by choices or being influenced by food companies which try to sell us what they're trying to sell us. So I said that before, and I'm saying that again, and look, I have to say I am a vegetarian, so I don't eat for over 32 years now. So I'm probably biased, not probably, I am biased here. So I like my plant-based foods, but they're definitely more affordable. They're better for us. They're better for our planet as well. So to cook at home, find few simple options. So cooking at home is always cheaper. Of course, if we're gonna order Uber Eats, that's gonna cost a fair bit, but cooking at home is usually much, much cheaper. So every time you cook a meal, cook a bit more and freeze. You will build a library of foods in your freezer. Just remember food safety here. So start small. You might need time to build your supplies, to build herbs and spices and oils and grains and legumes. You don't really need to cook all the time to eat on a budget. There's a lot of good stuff already prepared. You can always buy on sale or shop around, spend a little bit more time shopping. So plant-based foods, that's a fantastic illustration of how much $100 can actually buy for you in Australian supermarket. So it's done by, I think, government of Western Australia a couple years back. So $100 buys about 11 kilos of unhealthy food or 20 kilos of healthy food. So it's quite clear, you know, if you want to eat on a budget, where to look. So seasonal fruit and veggies usually cheaper than those out of season. Buying frozen is fantastic. Frozen fruit and vegetables are also very, very good addition. And sometimes, like I've been eating frozen broccoli for a couple months now because fresh broccoli costs, I don't know, nearly $10 a kilo. So frozen it is. And buy it on special because we do have specials in all the supermarkets. So buy dry legumes and dry grains and buy them on special. Buy canned vegetables and legumes, buy them on special. Choose produce from very top or very bottom shelves of the supermarket because that's where usually cheaper produce is. Quality is always good. If you're busy, again, look for the options which with minimal preparation or cooking. Plan a little bit, have them available so it's easier for you to throw stuff together. Have freezer, have your library of dinners or lunches in your freezer. Think about organizing meal preparation or cooking class. So if it's safe, if it's safely available for you right now. So I know that all of us dealing with some kind of illnesses right now, either, I don't know, 37th wave of COVID or something like this. So if it's safe, safe to get together with other people, think about organizing meal prep. People doing, for example, soup groups where everyone comes in, cooks different soups, everyone leaves with about 10 variety of dishes home. So takeaway is okay. I mentioned that before, just take your time,